I mean, the judging essentially is as far as obviously like A and B one more time is all the same. But
Right.
I guess the other change, maybe we should have touched on a little bit earlier, but kind of looping back to, is with in competition, we established that you can't do a protest before top 8, 1632.
Right.
There's also a change with the replay system as well. Can you touch on I guess what the change is and why that's happening?
Sure. So I'll give you the basic line of what's in there, and then I'll give you the reason behind it. So from here on out, in this particular rule book, the way that the flow of the show is going to go is the two drivers will do their run, and as soon as they cross the finish line and get back to grid, a replay will happen.
Okay.
Then they will do their second run, and another replay will happen. That doesn't sound too much different than last year, but what's different about it is that's how it's going to be every time. A judge can't ask for an ambiguous number of replays to see whether or not somebody dropped the tire or not. If there's a technical issue, yes, that can happen. Once we get into grade 8, we'll allow for replays to be asked for again. That's where the grade 8 on protest is where the grade 8 becomes more important. But in terms of the flow of the show, it'll be run, replay. What we've had in the past is we've had it where unlimited replays. Let's see it again from this angle. And the whole point of this year's sporting regulations is to make it so that the show is palatable and digestible for fans.
Okay.
And that's part of the reasons why we want to cut back on just allowing there to be an infinite number of replays so that they can see the most minuscule thing and make a judgment based on that. Our thought process is that if it can't be seen and it can't be seen by one replay, then it's probably the wrong thing to be going after, and it's going to cause controversy. So,
right, because I mean, essentially, we've established the idea is you guys are looking to be that. If you go to your first drift event, you're sitting at Irwindale, you're sitting at Atlanta, your visualization 80-90% of the time should match up with what the judges are making type thing.
Right, exactly.
Excellent. Cool. Stepping outside of the rule book real quick, Ryan, I think one of the biggest subjective controversies, issues, or problems maybe the sport is facing, maybe you don't view it as a problem, is the I guess horsepower wars, people are dubbing it now. 2-3 years ago, you showed up with 500-600 horsepower and you dialed some good grip into your car, you could be a champion. I mean, Tanner Faust 350Z, I think, is a perfect example. It was a pretty standard supercharged, VQ, and he won 2 championships. And now, I mean, how much of it's kind of, posturing, how much of it's real horsepower, who knows. But I mean, you've got, I would say, at least a dozen guys, I think they're going to be coming out over the 1,000 horsepower mark. And you got some poor guys like Tyler Wilson just pulled out of here who, is making 600 horsepower. It's like half now facing. I guess what's your take on that? Is that something you could see in the future being regulated in some kind of way through the sanctioning body?
Yeah, I don't think it's realistic to be able to restrict the power of the vehicles right now or be able to regulate it. I think that we have to depend on the tire to weight ratios to do a lot of that. Okay. But I do think that there are things that can be implemented that are not going to be so hard to regulate and are not going to drastically change the infrastructure of how we actually do the technical procedures on site. And that would be, for example, like maybe you only have a certain number of power adders that you can have. If you're going to have a turbocharger, maybe you can't have NOS or vice versa, right? Yeah. Those are things that I think that are a lot more simple than saying, we're going to put restrictor plates on and we're going to tech you before you go out into top 16. Those things become a lot more difficult. But I feel that your question is more of a deeper fundamental question, and that is how is the series trying to take into account the new guys that are coming in that are only bringing 600 horsepower, vehicles to the table versus the 1,000 horsepower guys, because a 600 horsepower car 5 years ago was a great car. Yeah. Now it's going to be a lot harder for those guys to compete, and that's where the whole idea of this whole Pro 2 series comes into play. Is that there are guys in the series, even this year, because it's still part of the old system, that probably should not be in the Pro Series. They should probably be in Pro 2, continuing their development. And at the same time, the series should have a cutoff of drivers in the series that is not a ambiguous one, where that's what it is right now. I mean, technically, we could add as many drivers as we want up until the point to where it congested, the whole run of the show for the entire weekend. So for us, what we need to do is it's about minimizing the number of overall drivers in the series so that the sponsorship pool can support those guys a lot more in an equal way, and giving the Pro 2 guys a place to be able to go and get up to that level, so that way there's always going to be the best guys in the Pro Series. That's really, I think, another answer to that particular question.
Theoretically, though, like in the future, like something like a power adder limiter, like if you do an engine swap, you can't add a turbo.
Right.
Or if you have a turbo, you can't add an engine. That's something that could theoretically happen in the
It's
future.
manageable, and it's something that we've spoken about, and Kevin, it definitely takes a lot of consideration into these things, because part of it has to be able to fall into the domain of, well, can we actually follow through with being able to make sure that people are not going outside of the pre-approved zones. And that's one of the toughest things.
Yeah, because I mean, doing something like when you're trying to limit a horsepower mark with all the different engines and all the different, the electronics that are available to you, you can dyno, do whatever, turn your car up and go compete. And
sure.
It's harder to quantify that. Like, I don't know if you're familiar, but like the Moto IQ series last year had a guy who cheated and was some form of manipulating his ECU, and they ended up catching him and proving that it happened. But on a track where you're racing other cars, if a guy's pulling away in the straightaway and everyone's supposed to have the same amount of horsepower, it's obvious. Whereas if you dialed in 1,500 horsepower in a drift round, or let's say you did fine on your lead run, or you messed up on your lead run, you're like, oh, I really need to keep up, let me turn it up. It's really hard to quantify power as opposed to like drag racing or road racing.
Sure.
But interesting. Let's play out some scenarios. I think is probably the easiest way.
Okay.
Let's just pretend, for sake of sake, that I'm a rookie this year.
Okay.
Scenario number one being, I'm a rookie. I've got a 240. I go out there and I try to compete in all 7 pro rounds. I say, whatever, Pro 2, I don't need you.
Right.
And I don't make the cut, which the cut essentially is not based on points, correct? It's based on rank.
Right.
So top 30, I would need to finish in the top 32 to continue in running
in the Pro
Formula D next year.
Championship.
In the Pro Championship. So let's say I fall into 33rd. I'm a rookie. I didn't mess with Pro 2. I screwed it up at Irwindale. Where do I go from there now that I didn't make the cut and I didn't run Pro 2?
Right. So that would be a very imprudent person that did that. And they would be going back to Pro-Am.
Okay.
Essentially. Or they would have to petition for Pro 2, which they would probably get.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the natural way to do it. What a person like that wants to do, a first-year driver that believes they can make it, but may not have the luck or the ability when it gets later on into the season, they should hedge their bet. Okay. And they should do Pro 2 as well. Because Pro 2 only comes about, in the middle part of the season. So you should be able to identify weaknesses in your program by that time. If you crash in Long Beach and you have a mediocre Atlanta, you can get ready and sign up for Pro 2 and hedge your bet. Because anybody ranked from 17 and above can technically sign up for Pro 2 to hedge. It doesn't, 16 and below is not really, it's not really applicable. You're going to make it for the most part. And those drivers have been pro drivers for a long time. But if you're a driver ranked from 17 to above, and if you feel the need to hedge your bet, you can sign up for Pro 2.
Now, is there a scenario, or you probably can't answer this question very directly. It's kind of a loaded question, I feel like. But let's say you're a guy who's been running in the Pro Series. I don't want to name any names for a long time, but they've kind of always been in that cusp. Say a guy who probably every year finishes between 20th and 40th, or shuffles through there. Has a better year, has a worse year. Let's say they turn up, they don't mess with Pro 2, and then they finish the series in a 33rd, 34th type scenario. Is there any kind of window or play where those guys could maybe realistically protest and retain being in the Formula Drift Pro Championship?
Petition, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, not protest. I'm sure they'll protest. Like, could they petition and kind of retain the Pro Championship, or like, are you really gonna kind of try and push those guys into Pro 2 no matter what?
Yeah, I think that technically they could do that, but we would not approve it. Because if they were on that cusp, the whole reason for the development of Pro 2 is to keep the right guys into the Pro Series and to give the guys that are not really ready an opportunity to develop their program. Because in our minds, the great thing about Pro 2 is the fact that it occurs on pro weekends. So you have all the pomp and circumstance of a pro event. You're in the environment, you're in the autograph sessions, you're hanging around, mingling with all the right sponsors, and you get to compete on the same track that the pro guys get to. So there's a great benefit there, and it should prepare people to get into the Pro Series and stay in the Pro Series. But there are those guys that you're talking about that are always kind of just right on the borderline. And for those guys, it might be an opportunity for them to say, you know what, I still might make it in the Pro Series, but if I don't, maybe I'll be a top 3 guy in Pro 2. I'll get a little bit more, championship prize money in Pro 2. I'll get a little bit more media on live stream because, we're going to broadcast Pro 2.
Cool.
So that is kind of the strategy behind it, if I were one of those guys.
Interesting. Now, going through, I guess, this information. So basically, if you're 1 to 16, you can't mess with Pro 2. If you're in 1732, you're open to run Pro 2. I guess with 17th to 32nd being welcome into Pro 2 come Palm Beach, plus all the guys that got Pro-Am licenses, how many people do you really anticipate being in Pro 2? Is this going to kind of be like another full event at most of these venues?
I hope not, and I don't think so.
Okay.
I think Pro 2 is going to be a smaller field of guys that are basically doing what we suggested they do, which is more or less hedging their bet, into either staying in the Pro or doing well enough to get into the Pro the following year. Because there are guys that have petitioned already for Pro 2 that we've accepted into Pro 2.
Okay.
So we think that there's probably going to be, between 16 and 25 guys that do some of the Pro 2 rounds.
Okay.
Because it's a top 16
bracket.
Right. And we're done with Pro 2 by the time Friday comes around.
Okay.
So we start Pro 2 on Thursday now.
So qualify Thursday, compete on Friday.
Right. So Friday for fans, you get Friday night practice, you get pro qualifying, and you get Pro 2 tandem.
Okay.
Round of 16.
Excellent. So really, it's kind of a cheater way too. Even if you're, let's say, 17th, 18th, and you're not super concerned about retaining, you can kind of sneak in there and get more track time.
You could, yeah. You could do that if you wanted to. Anybody that feels the need to either hedge their bets or that they want to make themselves a greater star in a series that has the same platform as the Pro Series might consider doing that.
Excellent. And I didn't specifically see it in here, but I remember reading, I think on something I posted that I disseminated some information from. You are only allowed to run the Irwindale Pro 2 event if you've run the previous rounds.
Right.
What's the reason behind that exactly?
The reason behind that is because in the past, when it's been open, we get bombarded with, literally 40, 50 drivers that want to come and do Irwindale. And it doesn't, there's a fairness question in there about the guys that have committed to Pro 2 and done it throughout the entire year, just to allow somebody to come in at the last minute and take up another spot. And it's also a logistics issue for us. We can't have 45 pro teams along with another 35 or 40 Pro-Am teams just because people want to come and compete at the biggest event of the year. So that's one of the reasonings behind it.
Now, who's going to be running the Pro 2, I guess, series on site? Is it going to be same judges, same team as like you were dealing with on the pro side?
Pretty much, yeah. There's going to be a carryover between from the judges and Jared, and there'll be a carryover at about a 75% level on the track staff.
Okay. So, I mean, really, you're kind of giving these guys a full Formula Drift experience. It's just different days, essentially.
That's right, yeah.
Excellent. And then, so Palm Beach, Evergreen, Texas. Who am I missing? New Jersey? Is that the other Pro 2?
No, you got them all except for Irwindale.
Irwindale.
Yep.
Oh, right. Irwindale. Yeah. So Palm Beach, Seattle, Texas, Irwindale is the
right.
4 rounds. Are all of those events then guaranteed that you'll be able to buy Friday tickets and go and watch the
Oh yeah.
Pro 2 competition?
Yeah. Nothing will change for the fan experience other than the fact that we have to readjust our schedule to accommodate for Pro 2 on Friday, which is not that much of an issue because we've already done Pro-Am before on Fridays. It's just we need to buffer time and the paddock space for Pro 2 guys.
So then, does this also mean that, I guess now, will Thursday practice kind of become an official part of the Formula D weekend, or is it still like an optional paid practice for the pro guys?
Well, the pro guys will still have their paid practice, and the Pro 2 guys will have their setup competition, their qualifying, and their practice and all that kind of stuff. But it won't be open to the public day. It'll still be a closed day.
But now, will people be able to watch even the Thursday Pro 2 qualifying on the live stream?
No, we won't start broadcasting anything until Friday.
Okay. So we kind of covered earlier, as I gave you that scenario where this year I had gotten my license last year. I ran Pro 1, I didn't run Pro 2, I got relegated back to Pro-Am. But let's say I'm a Pro-Am driver now, and I'm trying to go into I'm going to go to Pro 2 next year. I have to. I don't have a choice. But like, let's say I'm not from a traditional Pro-Am outlet. Like, let's say I'm coming from Drift Mania, or maybe I'm coming from some obscure series in like the Caribbean, or who knows, like a small series in Europe. Are you going to force kind of the funnel into the Pro 2? Like, obviously there's a chance to petition, but like, let's say I petition to run pro and you guys are like, I don't know if your program's really there. Would you kind of give an open opportunity for like an outside series guy to at least kind of run in the Pro 2 series, or is that something that's just kind of
we would
as it come?
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about an obscure series, I think they're probably more fit to a Pro 2. Mm-hmm. So that would be a good example of somebody that would say, we've had a number of these occurrences this year, is somebody from a European country that in a smaller series that maybe we don't necessarily recognize. We'll petition for the Pro Series and we'll say, maybe the credential is more sufficient for Pro 2. So they'll go into Pro 2. I think maybe the question that a lot of people would want to know is that, can you still petition for the Pro Series from an outside series? Could a D1 driver petition for the Pro Series, or are we going to make them go into Pro 2?
Yeah, so in looking at Pro 2, is it, I guess, a scenario where, like, let's say I'm Kuma Kubo from D1, are you going to stick this guy in Pro 2 and kind of take some of these chances from these pro guys moving up? Or, like, is there an ability that a series that you can say that's, like, parallel with Formula Drift, like, can they petition directly into pro?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We still want to reserve the right to allow other drivers that we feel that are at the level of FD drivers or higher to be able to petition into the series. So after this year, after 2014, which is this kind of transitional year between all these things that are going on, from existing Pro-Am responsibilities and obligations, new implementation of Pro 2, and qualifying up to 32 for the Pro Series, you're going to be left with 32 Pro Series guys and 8 Pro 2 guys, making a 40-car field going into 2015.
Okay.
However, we still will allow for an outside driver to petition into the Pro Series to make it a 41-car field.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why we don't necessarily have a set number of drivers yet. That could be something for the future, is we want to allow for the guys that are at the level of top drifters in the world to still be able to compete in the Pro Series if they want to. But I will say that the one event petitions are probably going to be no more.
Interesting.
We're going to want you to run the whole season.
So now, okay, excellent. And it's very possible that a D1 driver may have petitioned for this season?
It's guaranteed that they have.
Excellent. Perfect. I think the last thing that I think we need to cover with Pro 2, which you kind of just touched on right there, is so Pro 2 is a top 16 format. We're looking at maybe 18 to 25 guys. How do I need to win? How do I move into the Pro Series the next year?
All you have to be for qualifying into the Pro Series is be in the top 8.
Regardless of how many points that ends up being, it's just a 8 and in.
Right, and to renew your pro license, you need to be in the top 32. You need to be in point range of about 64 to retain your Pro 2 license if you don't fall within that 8.
Excellent. Now, does the Pro 2 Series point structure, is it identical to the Pro Series? Like, is it 100 points for a win?
Yeah, it is, and just the minimum requirement is less to retain.
Okay.
It's not a number because there's an ambiguous number of drivers, whereas in the Pro Series, it's just going to be the top 32. So
Got
we
it.
set that standard.
So what is
64.
64? So really, essentially, you need to get 2 top 16s out of 4 type situation.
Right.
Or
It shouldn't be difficult, and obviously the car count is going to make a big part of the difference.
Right.
If we end up with a round where there's only 15 guys, a lot of guys are going to have a huge benefit for that particular round. If we have a round where we have 25 guys, then a good chunk of guys outside from 17 to 25 are going to have a tougher time accumulating points.
Interesting. And then I guess, is there any plans to change the Pro-Am side now that you've got a feeder series? Is there any likelihood of maybe opening up to more Pro-Am series or increasing the number of licenses coming out of some of these series?
Well, the licenses will be no more for the Pro. Everybody is pushing into Pro 2 now.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, is there a chance that you'll get more Pro-Am licenses for Pro, since now they're going to Pro 2 into like a feeder? Is there a chance that you'll grow the series number or grow the number of licenses per series?
It could be. I think that Jim, who works on that program pretty exclusively, has had many discussions with a lot of the Pro-Am guys, and most of them are very supportive of this program, the Pro 2 program. And they typically are looking at their individual car counts and how many events that they do in a way to measure how many actual licenses they get. So that'll still be kind of the formula. If you're doing 10 events or you're doing 4 events and you've got 40 guys versus 20 guys, the amount of licenses that you're going to be able to receive will be based on that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you spending some time with us. Thanks
sure.
for shedding light onto the new rules, and we'll see you at Long Beach.
All right, cool, thanks.
Awesome, thanks.